On the surface, they looked ordinary. They were neighbors, classmates, co-workers, the kinds of people you wouldn't notice twice. Ted Bundy was a charming law student. Jeffrey Dahmer was the quiet guy next door. The Zodiac Killer could have been anyone you passed on the street. And yet, behind those familiar faces lived something deeply broken. So what turns a person into a monster? There isn't one answer. Serial killers aren't born from a single flaw, but from fractured minds shaped by trauma, narcissism, isolation, and, most chillingly, a profound lack of empathy. When those elements collide in just the wrong way, the result can be devastating. The charming manipulator, Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy remains one of the most disturbing contradictions in criminal history. Intelligent, attractive, and articulate, he murdered at least 30 young women between 1974 and 1978, likely more. Bundy was driven by grandiose narcissism, an obsessive need to feel superior, admired, and powerful. His life was a performance, carefully crafted to project intelligence and control. But beneath that confidence was a fragile ego, hypersensitive to rejection and humiliation. Psychologists often describe this as vulnerable narcissism, a hidden insecurity masked by arrogance. When Bundy felt ignored or diminished, violence became his way of reclaiming dominance. His charm wasn't accidental, it was a weapon. He pretended to be injured, wearing a sling or using crutches, to trigger sympathy before attacking. Even in court, Bundy treated his trial like a stage, soaking in attention and media coverage. For him, notoriety was fuel. Control was everything. The disconnected loner, Jeffrey Dahmer. Where Bundy craved admiration, Jeffrey Dahmer craved connection, or at least his distorted version of it. Between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer murdered 17 men and boys. His crimes weren't about fame or thrill. They were about fear of abandonment. He was painfully lonely, emotionally detached, and deeply afraid of being left alone. From an early age, Dahmer withdrew from others. He dissected dead animals and fixated on decay, early signs of his fascination with control over life and death. As an adult, that fixation turned horrifying. Dahmer admitted his murders were attempts to create permanent companionship. He drugged his victims and conducted grotesque experiments, drilling into their skulls and injecting chemicals in a failed attempt to create zombies, people who would never leave him. Each act was a desperate effort to silence his emptiness. His story reveals an unsettling truth. When the need for love exists without empathy, it can mutate into something monstrous. The taunting enigma, the Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer stands apart. Never identified, he terrorized Northern California in the late 1960s and early 1970s, officially linked to 5 murders, but claiming many more. Unlike Bundy or Dahmer, Zodiac's motivation wasn't personal intimacy or ego repair, it was psychological warfare. He fed on fear. Through cryptic letters and ciphers sent to newspapers, he mocked police, flaunted his intelligence, and turned murder into a public spectacle. One decoded message read chillingly, "I like killing people because it is so much fun." Zodiac didn't just want to kill, he wanted to dominate an entire society. His unpredictability, different weapons, different methods, kept authorities off balance and the public terrified. His greatest weapon wasn't a gun or knife, but the fear he spread with his words. Conclusion: Ted Bundy, the narcissistic performer. Jeffrey Dahmer, the broken loner. The Zodiac Killer, the egotistical phantom. Different paths, different minds, but the same core traits: fractured identities, an overwhelming need for validation or control, and a terrifying absence of empathy. Their stories force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The monsters we fear most rarely look like monsters at all. They look like us. And that leaves one haunting question: how many walk among us, wearing a mask of sanity that's only one crack away from breaking?